What's up, beautiful people? How are all of you doing? This is your boy TW Suggs sending you all types of mad love and dope vibes. What's up? Turn that music up in your speaker. Do not touch the dial. We have a dope show for you. Move with it. Move with it. What's up, beautiful people? Hopefully you are tuned in and you're feeling good. You're feeling refreshed. You're feeling revived after a long week. Hopefully you're feeling all the dope vibes and all that goodness that I'm sending to you right now. I just pushed it all the way through your speaker, all the way through the screen. Wherever you are, you got it. It's all yours. I love you. You love me? All right, cool. That's fine, even if you don't. Listen, we have an awesome show for you. Again, I'm your boy TW Suggs, your host for today for the TOMMIE Talk Show. And for this entire month, we are celebrating and we're honoring young men and older men. Our last show, it was about celebrating and supporting young Black men. And I don't know about you all, but there seems to be a war for our young Black men. You know, it seems to be a lot going on in the communities. Our young Black men are dying. They seem to have, some of them are lacking some direction. They're lacking support. So we had a whole show. Go check it out. It's on YouTube. It's on Podbean. It's on P3 Christian Radio. Go check out the last show. We had some young Black men in the studio to tell us what life is like through their eyes and through their ears, as well as we also asked them to share their thoughts and their ideas on some paths forward that we can do to support the young Black men in our community. We also had some amazing guests. Some mentors who also shared some perspective through their eyes as well. So you don't want to miss that show. Go ahead and check it out. Again, it's on Podbean, YouTube, P3 Christian Radio, and iHeart. Today's show is called Beneath His Armor. This show is called Beneath His Armor. And what we're doing is it's a conversation with men about men, where we're going to be asking men some really interesting, some deep questions. And the reason why it's important for us to do that is because a lot of men, one, don't have that space to speak freely. Also, there's a lot of misunderstanding and many misconceptions about what being a man is. There's a lot of societal, unhealthy societal norms and expectations that are placed on men that seem to go unaddressed. And we just wanted to, surface some of those things and see what happens. But before we do that, I asked you all a community question. That's how we always open up our shows. We start off with a community question. And a community question, and Derek, I'm going to pull you into this one too. Uh-oh. So, oh yeah, get ready. I'm going to pull Pelzer in too. So the community question is, what Black man do you want to honor and why? And so I want to read what some of you shared in reference to what man do you want to honor and why. So the first one is from a very good friend of mine by the name of Tammy Howard. She said, I want to shout out my amazing husband, Alan Howard, because he is an amazing father. And anybody who knows Alan Howard, you know that he has like just this amazing swag, like a little quiet storm. And Alan has the most soothing, the soothing voice that he needs to be doing some type of commercial or something like that. I don't know. Then you have Angela Daniels, who said, my dad, even though he is not here in the physical, his memory lives on due to what he represented, what he taught me, and how he was there for me whenever I needed him. I had Jerry Petito. And Jerry Petito's just said, my dad. And then you have Shannon Red Ashley. What's up, Shannon? Haven't talked to you in a while, sis. She says, my dad, my godfather, and brother. My dad for being a dad for being a good dad who never had his. My godfather for pushing forward despite losing the love of his life. My brother for being a single parent of two kids whom he still supports them as adults. He took his responsibility seriously. Then I have my old pastor, Pastor Byron L. Craig, who said Ike Barfield because he was a model he was a model of a man of God to Tommy. So Ike Barfield is my dad, who passed in July of last year. So big ups to you, Dad, and also a shout out to my biological father, Tommy Wilson Suggs Sr., who also passed last year. So just big ups to them both. And so I want to pull in Derek. So is there a man that you want to shout out, and why, man?
So oddly enough, and people that know me will know I'm saying oddly, but I shout out my father.
Nice.
Father, rest in peace. Similarly, my father passed away in January of 2017.
Oh, sorry.
My condolences for your
thank you
too, man.
Thank you.
That's not easy.
Yeah.
And me and my father did not have the greatest relationship as I was growing up.
Yeah.
He had his own demons that he struggled with really for the majority of his adult life, but he tried.
Yeah.
And oddly, what's odd about it is that now, as a father and as a husband, I hear myself preaching out the same things that he used to say to me.
Okay.
And when I was little, I didn't appreciate it. When I was younger, I never appreciated it. I was angry and all that other stuff.
Yeah.
But like he gave it his best shot, and he gave me a lot to go on. So if I'm gonna honor anybody, it's gonna be him.
I appreciate that, man. Thank you for that transparency and that honesty, man. I appreciate that. I think that being a parent and just life and having family can be such a complicated thing, and I think that a lot of people fail to remember and realize that our fathers, our mothers, that they're humans too, and that sometimes they're figuring this thing out the same way, and the same time we're trying to figure things out as well.
Absolutely, man.
Yeah. Cool. All right, excellent. So listen, we're going to be right back, and when we come back, we have an interview with the one and the only Dr. George James. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. What's up, beautiful people? Right with me right now, I have my guest, TOMMIE, Derek Killebrew. He's still locked and loaded in the studio, and who I also have with me. Listen, I have a very special guest. You may have seen him on the Today Show, CNBC, NBC, Good Day LA, or on Good Day Philadelphia. He is a father, a therapist, corporate and media consultant, and mental health expert. He is a licensed marriage and family therapist. He's the chief innovative officer, senior staff therapist, and AAMFT approved supervisor at Council for Relationships. He got to tell me what that acronym is. He is also the assistant professor for the Couples and Family Therapy Program at Thomas Jefferson. Ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcome Dr. George James. What's up, sir?
What's good, man? Look, I should have you, announce my every time I step out. I feel hype already.
I got you covered, man. I got you, man. I'll have some confetti. I'll just go, there you go. Oh, y'all make way for Dr. James.
They ain't ready. Let's go.
Ready, let's go. Listen, before we actually got started, I was telling Dr. James that I really appreciated him. And y'all, I want to tell y'all the backstory. So years ago, this is like pre-pandemic, I served as an advisory board member on the Black Male Development Symposium led by Dr. Doreen Lowry. And anybody who's in Philadelphia, anybody who's Arcadia University staff, alum, student, whatever, that lady, the power that she walks in. And we had a symposium, and we just pulled together different speakers, and Dr. James, he has this way of, like, he could be pious, he could be, puffed up and boastful and proud, but he has this way, just swag, where it's really mellow, it's laid back, but when he says stuff, it's like, okay, let me get my note and paper right quick. I got to write that down, because I need to meditate on that. I may even need to pray about that one. Dr. James, thank you so much for everything that you're doing, man. Welcome to the show.
Thanks, man. A pleasure to be here, and I appreciate those kind words. And definitely shout out to Dr. Lori, who she has been a champion, doing so much for people, but especially for Black men over the years. And she also silently helped me to create space for my date night event. And she was the one that gave me access to Arcadia, the castle, when I had the first
Wow.
one. So now I'm actually getting ready to do my third one at a different location. But
Nice.
shout out to her for how she opens doors for people.
Yeah, she is she is the epitome of fearless leadership. Like she
Yeah,
doesn't care. She don't care if it's a lock on the door. She's going to kick it in and invite other people inside the room. Yeah.
that's
So
right.
wow, thank you for that, Dr. James. Listen, before we hop into this, is there a man that you want to honor today, and why?
Yeah, I was thinking about that question when you put it out there, your community question, and
Mhm.
I want to honor, my father who, through lots of challenges, really pushed through. But you know what really landed for me is that there have been lots of men who've deposited in my life, and so I
Yeah.
just want to shout out to all the father figures, right? All the
Wow.
coaches, the uncles, the
Yeah.
the folks who just step up when you don't even realize that they're being watched, but they're just good dudes, stand up dudes.
Yeah.
And I've had a few of those in my life, and I'm grateful, and I hope to continue to be that to other people.
Wow, wow, absolutely. Thank you for that, Dr. James. And I'll say this as as somebody who looks at your Instagram page, regularly, you are definitely doing that. I know, at least for me. So I'm gonna
I
give you your
appreciate that.
flowers now. Like at least for me, as a from one black man to another, I definitely appreciate you.
Of course, man.
Um, so as you know, Dr. James, we're having this discussion around beneath his armor. And beneath his armor, we're talking about the things that's going on with men, things that men don't want to talk about, um, men's mental health. It's just a conversation with men about men. And I want to ask you, especially through your lens as a black man yourself and also as a therapist, when you look at the landscape of men and what you're seeing going on in the world, what are some of the things that you're seeing as it pertains to men, their health, especially their mental health and wellness?
Yeah, man, I think this is such an important topic, and I'm so glad that you brought it up. And I really appreciate this theme, like under the armor, because it's something we need to be talking about,
Yes,
and we
sir.
need to be sounding the alarm like as much as possible. I always think about the movie Gladiator. If if
Mm.
anybody's ever seen it, right? Like,
Oh yeah.
and there's multiple parts of this movie that you might say, "Oh, all right, this movie is great or it's dope," but there's parts where he has his armor on and he's walking and he's bleeding under the armor. And I think like there's so many of us who are bleeding, especially men, especially black men, and we just like we walking around, we got blood oozing out, but we're not trying to get like healed, we're not trying to get fixed, we're not trying to get support. And that bleeding that happens is sometimes our mental health, our
Wow.
physical health, our relationships, just so many ways we are bleeding, but we just show up because we think that's what we need to do with all the armor.
Wow. Wow. What do you think is contributing to men feeling like they have to keep that armor on? What's going on? And I have some comments here, and I'm also going to pull in Derek in a little bit to see if he has anything he wants to share with you or ask you. But what do you think is going on? What's the dynamic that we're seeing that causes men to keep the armor on even though they're bleeding within it? Do they even know that they're bleeding?
Yeah, I think some of us don't know we're bleeding. I think
Wow.
some of us like will see it. Will people will have there will be signs, right? They'll be
Yeah.
like, "Yo, I don't really feel like getting out of bed today," or like,
Yeah.
"I'm not really feeling, my relationship right now," or I do stuff to sabotage my life, or I
Wow.
start to engage in some stuff that maybe I shouldn't be, or doing it more than I should. Those are the signs that I'm
Yes, sir.
bleeding. And I think like, there's a history, right, of that like, all right, as men we shouldn't talk, we should just go out there and do stuff.
Yes,
And
sir.
even though some of those messages have changed, like I'll give props to the younger generation. They're more willing to say I need help. They're more willing to go out there and say I'm going to see a therapist. But some of that is out there, and especially for black men, we feel like it's our badge of honor almost, is like, yeah, I heard somebody say not that long ago, oh yeah, I haven't been to the doctor in like 2 decades, and they were proud of it,
Wow.
like
Whoa.
like they did something, like, yo,
Yeah.
no, that's not good, right?
Yeah.
And so if we do that even with our physical body, there's so many ways we do that with our emotional body and our internal being, that we don't go out and seek the help and support that we need. So we roam around here just dripping blood everywhere, man.
Wow. Wow. And you know what? Just going along with that analogy, of just dripping blood, it also makes me think about, sir, where are you bleeding?
Yeah.
If you're not getting the care that you need to deal with the wound, then you're bleeding on people, you're bleeding on your children, you're bleeding on your marriage, you're bleeding on your
Yes, sir.
job, and then that causes this dysfunction that goes unaddressed. And it's not, and here's the thing, a lot of people, from my perspective, I feel that a lot of people, they'll look at men and they're like, okay, well, you, they have an unrealistic perspective of men and an unrealistic expectation of men, not knowing that they're bleeding and not knowing that men are hurting. So
Yeah.
when you see what's going on in the family, when you see what's going on out here on the corner, especially for our young black men, what's happening is it's not that they're bad people. They may just be
No.
bleeding, or they
Yeah.
may have been bled on.
Yeah, no, 100% all the way. And I've worked with enough young black folks, young black men in certain situations where they might feel all their options are like maybe illegal activity or
Yeah.
violence, and even like what we see around gun violence. But when you have the conversation with them, a lot of times I've heard folks say like, "Yo, I don't think I'm gonna live past 21." I mean, what type of choices you think you would make if you feel the end of
Woo.
your life is at 21 and you're at 18, 19? Right? When, like, what type of decisions you think you make,
Yeah.
right? You might be more reckless, right? And if
Yeah.
you know lots of other people like that, so some of it is like when we really get to talking to folks, we realize, yo, you're depressed. You're dealing with some
Wow.
anxiety right now.
Wow.
You're dealing with a lot more than you just wilding out. There's more
Yeah.
to the story, and if we once again go beneath that armor, people been bleeding on you. You've had deaths. You've had to witness things. You
Wow.
had like grief and other things that is overwhelming, and you've made it difficult for somebody to come close to you and give you a hug and say, "Bro, I love you."
Wow. Wow. There is such an importance, and I'm gonna pull Derek into the conversation too. There is such an importance when you just said for you to be pulled close and for somebody to hug you and say, "Man, I love you." That is something that I feel is missing so much in our communities, especially with men in general, but especially when it comes to black men, that there aren't those safe spaces for that to transpire. Derek, anything you want to share, man? Anything that's coming up for you while we're having this conversation, man?
I mean, and Dr. James, I really love your that gladiator analogy because one, I love the movie.
Oh yeah, oh yeah.
I'm kind of
That's
excited for
right.
Gladiator 2, but I'm not sure how excited. But there's something that you said that makes me think even deeper into the analogy, just in terms of we're bleeding, right? And a lot of times when people, if you think about those gladiator days, right, people die. They either died from loss of blood or they would die because that cut got infected before
Whoa,
it had a chance to heal, right? And if something gets
Yeah.
whoa,
infected, what you think about is things that are not supposed to be inside of you get access to you because of the open wound, and because
wow,
those
Yeah.
negative things get access to vulnerable parts of you while you're vulnerable,
Yes.
they then
Yes.
exploit you. They then turn you into something that you're not supposed to be. They then make you even more unhealthy than you were before.
yeah,
And then thinking about that and how many of us are walking around, and because we're wounded, our ear gates are open to voices we normally wouldn't listen to, right? And
yeah,
our eye gates are open to we're looking at things we normally wouldn't look at that aren't necessarily healthy for us, or healthy for our relationships,
yeah.
or healthy for just how we perceive and see ourselves, right? So it's that additional kind of aspect to that open gaping wound that we're walking around with, is that if we don't know we're bleeding, we also don't realize that certain things are getting access to us, and
Wow,
we're letting them change how we
wow.
perceive the world, and we're not even cognizant to it, and we're not aware of it because we don't think we're being infected, because we don't really know that we're wounded.
Yeah.
So that just what you said right there, Dr. James, just opened that whole thought process up for me.
No, what you
Woo.
just said there, I'm done. I'm out. Like I don't need to say nothing else.
Woo.
But yo, man, that I appreciate that, and just from the work I do, right? most people, for instance, don't cheat just because they want to. There's a few folks that's what they do, but they cheat because something else is going on. They cheat because they didn't see a good relationship in their life. So they've been wounded from a long time about healthy relationships. They cheat because they don't know how to talk to their spouse or partner about what's going on. And then somebody else pulls up and starts speaking to that wound, and then they feel like that's what they need to do. And that's just one example. Right, there's so many different ways that what you say shows up, and then now what was something that maybe you could work through, maybe you could get stitched up and heal, is now a bigger issue. And we can't even get to the real wound, because now that you done made it messy, we gotta look at the other stuff around it. So like, you know, what you just said is real and powerful, man. So I appreciate that.
Wow. It's almost like you were saying, they speak to the wound. It's almost like a wound whisperer. You know what I mean? Like, and you have people, there are people out there who prey on that, who look for, there are people who prey on the vulnerability of men, who look for those weak spots that exist within strength. So you mentioned the man not being able to talk. And I think most likely there are a lot of women right now listening who's like, I'm in that space right now. I know he's bleeding. I don't want him to talk to somebody else outside of our relationship. I know he's bleeding, but he has this armor on. What advice or wisdom would you give to a woman who's in that space right now? And here's the thing too, it could be a mother. It doesn't necessarily have to be a wife and a husband, or a girlfriend and a boyfriend. It could be a mother who knows that, I know my son is bleeding right now and I can't reach him. He's 18, he's wilding out. I didn't raise him this way. How does a mother, how does a wife minister, reach, touch a man who is so guarded with this armor?
Yeah, there's three things that pop up in my mind. One is that, you know, as you've already mentioned, right, like there's, at my belief, there's just power in praying, right? Like there's just ways that, like, look, I don't know, like, God, you just gonna have to do something, right? Like, you know, that level of like,
that's real, and those prayers work.
right. Like that level of like, you gotta go in like that way, right? Like, and just sometimes like that's where it is. You just gotta be there and consistent. And even for the folks who are like, yo, I'm not fully there with my faith, but there's something about putting your belief and your intentions into seeing something change, right? And so that's just one. Two, I think there's a way that sometimes we respond, or the people close to men respond to the bleeding. Like, yo, you making a mess. Like clean this up. Or like, oh, like we respond to what we see. We respond to the symptoms and not recognize that that's coming from somewhere. And so a lot of men will then say, because, you know, truth be told, that's my belief, and maybe it's just me, I think most men are sensitive, right? And I think a lot of women don't see or think about that because of all the narratives. And so once you now like attack what seems like my mess, the blood that's around, the symptoms, now I'm not gonna expose the wound that I've been feeling, and I'm gonna pull back even further. So love, kindness, like don't look at like the mess as much, but try to figure out like, why is this and where is this coming from? And then three, I'm a big advocate for the tribe, right? That sometimes we might not be able to get in, but the community or tribe might be able to. So talk to folks, talk to the sibling or the parent or the family or the boys. Yo, you know your boy's tripping right now, or yo, something's going on. I've been trying, I've been praying, I've been loving, but I'm doing all this stuff, but I don't know what's going on. Check in on your boy. And I think like those three are at least some ways to try to make a difference.
Wow. Thank you for that. I appreciate that, Dr. James. And I think that a lot of people that are listening right now needed to hear that, because I think that in many cases, a lot of the responses that people have, I hate our producer. So, Dr. James, I didn't know that you were able to see that.
I did.
Oh,
the doors of the church
are now, huh? Oh my goodness.
In 3 minutes, he preached.
3 minutes. Let me tell you. So for those of you who are listening instead of watching, our producer just put up that that our guest Dr. James, so he's a Baptist, so he has a 3-point sermon. That's something that is the cornerstone and the pillar of most Baptist ministers. But he broke that thing down. It was so succinct, man. For a man who may be listening, who has been questioning therapy, it seems very daunting, especially because it's something that we're talking about it, but to your point, it's not really cascading all the way throughout the family dynamic, and it's not really normalized. It's becoming more and more entrenched in our culture and more normalized. But for the man who's like, and I thought about it, don't know if that's for me, and and do I want to, or maybe a little, timid or not timid, but apprehensive, with going down that path. Do you have any advice or anything that you would share with him?
Yeah, it's just always been my belief nobody gets to success or to a greater place, in any part of your life, without some support or help.
Yeah.
And I think if you can look at therapy as, hey, that's the support, that's the help that I need. My work, and I think even part of my calling, is that I'm there to let people know it's okay to go to therapy. I'm there to let people know it's okay for Black folks to go to therapy.
Yeah.
I'm there to also know, like, Black men, it's okay to talk to somebody. And I think that what people realize is like, oh, this is like just talking to my friend, or like, oh, this is talking to my boy, and that this is someone that may or may not know your situation, so they're not going to have any judgment. They also are going to support and challenge you. And sometimes what I really value about the work is that people leave saying, you know what, I didn't know what to expect about this, but I actually feel a little bit better. There was something about me talking about this stuff that allows me to feel lighter. And we don't realize how heavy it is, the stuff we carry around. And just by talking to someone, and for me in particular, my work is around helping people, especially men, professional men, entrepreneurial men, people who are going after their thing, to balance and to find a way to be successful in business and in love being family or romantic relationships, that usually one of those areas are struggling, or multiple, or both. And sometimes we need somebody that's just going to be there because it's lonely.
Yeah.
Right? You can't talk to you can't talk to your girl. You can't talk to your family. You can't talk to the people that you report to, or people who report to you, and you are alone. And that's where therapy can be helpful.
Wow. That's amazing. And the fact that you identify that as your calling, like that's a part of your purpose, man, that's beautiful, Dr. James. Derek, is there any final thoughts you want to share, man?
To share, not really. I did have a quick question for you, Dr. James. Just because I know that a lot of times when we're dealing with mental health, that these feelings manifest themselves into behaviors, right? So what are some things that we should look out for as men in terms of like behavioral changes? Like, what's going to help me know, like, oh snap, I'm doing that. Maybe I need to talk to somebody, or something's awry, and it's not just the moon, right? It's just something is affecting me, and I need to address it.
Yeah.
What would you say are some of those things?
Yeah, no, that's great. So a lot of things that people often experience, so anxiety and depression, right? We hear about depression, but like what that might mean for somebody is that, has my appetite changed? Am I eating more or less? Has my sleep changed? Am I sleeping more or less? Am I moody? Am I irritable? Am I just, that thing that you used to love doing? Like, you're like, I don't feel like it right now. Like those are kind of signs of like, I used to like playing ball every week, but nah, I don't want to play. Right? I don't like, y'all catch me next time. Those are signs that things maybe have shifted. Or being anxious is like, now I find myself worrying about the future, like excessively. I'm thinking about what's going to happen, and what's going to happen after that, and what's going to happen after that. And I get paralyzed in my thoughts, in my action. That's where like there's probably a lot going on that you might just need some support. And that's just, a quick example of how it can show up in our lives.
Wow. Appreciate that. Thank you. And thank you for that question. That was solid. So, Dr. James, we're getting ready to close this interview, man. We have to have you back. I hope you know that, right?
Anytime. Just let me know.
All right, cool. So where can people find you, and do you have anything coming up, man?
Appreciate that. Yeah, you can find me on Instagram or Twitter. My handle's at George Talks. So at George Talks. My website is georgetalks.com. Although it's acting a little funky right now, I'm about to get that right. And the best way to reach out to me is you can reach out to my assistant, and the email is assistant@georgetalks.com. And part of what I've been really doing is just I've been fortunate to do more executive coaching, so helping those leaders, helping those people who just need, maybe you say like, I don't know if I want therapy, but I can use somebody to help me to balance the stuff that is the business as well as my life. I've been doing more of that. I've been doing some more consulting and speaking, and one of my signature talks is called I Give Myself Permission, because there's so many ways that we say no or don't give ourselves permission for the things we need, whether it's to go talk to someone, we keep saying no, or go start something, whether it be a business, or to live our life the way that maybe God is encouraging us to do. We have to give ourselves permission to do that. So those are some of the things that I've been building even more, and there's a lot more of that that'll be coming out.
I know that's right. I know that's right. Well, Dr. James, thank you so much, man. We appreciate you. We'll definitely have you back.
Thanks, man. Thanks for having me on. Appreciate it. Much love to the both of you. Keep doing what you're doing.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much. Thank you. Folks, don't go anywhere. We'll be right back with the Tommy Talk Show. So today we are spotlighting Akeem because Akeem has some wonderful news to share with us about what, Akeem? Is it a book? Is it, what's going on, man?
It's a book, Tommy.
Let's go, man. Let's go, man. Tell us about this book, good brother.
Yes, first of all, I want to say thank you to you and Derek for allowing me to come on and share about this adventure that I have taken on. I wrote my first book, and it's entitled it's entitled, thanks, man. It's entitled If I Can, You Can. If I Can, You Can. And I was listening to Dr. James and you and Derek talk about, men, men that's just been dealing with so much trauma, how to talk about that trauma, to get it off their shoulders, get it off their heart, that are just been burdening them for years, right?
Yeah.
So it ties right into this segment about my book. Like I said, it's entitled If I Can, You Can. It's a motivational book.
Yeah.
It's an all-tell book, talk about my life.
Yeah.
The things that I have encountered in my 33 years of living.
Yes, sir.
From dealing with the absence of my father,
yeah,
and how I felt into depression, and wanted to commit suicide,
yeah,
but how I overcame that situation.
yes, sir.
And also dealing with the death of my brother, who was tragically taken away from us back in 2011 from the violence on the streets of Philadelphia.
Yeah.
So I talk about that. I talk about the struggles that my mom had to face, only making $5.25. Working 9-10 hours a day, but how she raised 5 wonderful children.
Yeah.
And how she was able to provide.
Yes, sir.
We wouldn't tell that we is living in poverty, but she made it still look good. So my book is to basically share my story to help somebody else.
Yeah.
And how I came about it, Tommy, after our graduation last year. Me and Tommy graduated from PCOM.
Come on, PCOM alum.
Exactly. Yep. We graduated from PCOM, and one of the elders from my church was at the graduation. And we went to dinner, and she said, "King, you have to tell your story.
Yeah.
You have to tell your story."
Yeah.
And I just was thinking about that. That thing been sitting in my spirit for so long. And the crazy part, Tommy, I had written a book. It was already notes in my phone. On the iPhone, notes.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And literally, it was already there. I just had to put it together.
Yeah.
So this book is just to help motivate, to inspire people. That's just not young people, but I find out people of all ages just need to be motivated these days. Our community, our community, our city is just facing so much problems and so many statistics. And these young people need to know that they can break those generational curses.
Yes, sir.
They can break those barriers that have been placed on their life.
Yes, sir.
We all go through something, right?
Yeah.
And the crazy part there is that so many young people share the same story that I had.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
But by them reading my book, it will help them identify those problems
Yeah.
and how to overcome them.
Nice. This is good, man. So you're going to have a book launch event, right?
Yes, the book launches on July 2nd, 2023, Sunday, July 2nd, at the Social Space in Gaydon, Pennsylvania. The address is
Nice.
717 Church Lane, Gaydon, Pennsylvania, 19050. The event is free. Just come and buy a book. We're gonna have
Sweet.
food. We're gonna have a panel discussion. Hear about some young men that share the same story that I have, and just to motivate each other and love on each other during that time. It's not about me. It's about sharing this story that just to help motivate people. Period.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. King, thank you so much, man. Where can people find you, brother?
Yep. I am Akeem D Toes on Instagram and Facebook. Akeem D Toes. Yes, follow me on Instagram and Facebook at I am Akeem D Toes on Instagram and just my name Akeem D Toes on Facebook. I appreciate you all for this time and opportunity.
Absolutely, man. Thank you so much for coming through for our community spotlight. Ladies and gentlemen, don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. What's up, beautiful people? This is your boy TW Subs with the Tommy Talk Show. We are continuing our discussion beneath his armor, where we are celebrating and supporting men in general. And we're going to get deep into what's going on with men in the world today, what's going on in our hearts, what's going on in our minds. We just had an awesome conversation with Dr. James, and we also, Dr. George James, and then we also just heard from, had our community spotlight with Akeem Taos. And now we are getting ready to hop into a group discussion. And I have Derek Killebrew with me in the studio. I have Dr. James Mable with me virtually. And then I also have my brother, Daniel Trawick, virtually as well. So Derek, tell us a little bit about yourself. Then we'll hop over to Dr. James. And then we'll hop over to Derek. All right?
Yep. Well, I am Derek Killebrew, videographer, photographer, owner of Viewpoints Media, and former learning professional back in the day. But yeah, married, 2 kids, Bible thumper, the whole thing.
Yeah,
so, that's me.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you, man. Thank you.
Yes, sir. I'm Dr. James Mable. Reside here in the great state of Texas, Houston, and just happy to be here for the opportunity. I'm a gospel recording artist, professor, lifelong educator, and just love to use all gifts necessary for the edification of the kingdom of the Lord. So happy to be here.
Thank you for being with us, sir.
Hello, hello. I am Daniel Trawick. I am a child of God,
Hey.
minister, speaker, teacher, educator, married with 11 children.
Woo!
Um,
Woo!
and so, yeah, author. And I'm a busy man, busy man.
Oh yes. Oh yes. That's what we're calling it. That's what we're calling
You're
it.
doing God's
Woo! Goodness gracious. Wow. Wow. Thank you, gentlemen, for being here. I ain't gonna lie. When Dr. James started speaking, I was like, oh man, this man got a preaching voice right here. He about to take us, about to rip that thunder right quick. Woo! Oh man. So listen, gentlemen, thank you so much for being here. I definitely appreciate you all for taking time out of your busy schedules, with everything that you all are doing to have this conversation with us around this table, around getting beneath his armor, and really looking at what's going on with men and the landscape of men, and even pulling some of your own experiences and thoughts in reference to some of the things that you experience as men, and even some of the things that you all see going on with other men, maybe in your community, in your family, in your friendship circle, network, or just in general. And before I hop into that, just real quick, we heard from my homie Derek, but for you two, is there a man that you would want to shout out and honor right now before we hop into our discussion?
Absolutely, man. I would just, definitely shout out my father. Obviously, it's Father's Day weekend.
Yeah,
My father, Pastor James Mable Sr., just an icon, my hero.
yeah.
Has been pastoring 35 plus years back in my hometown, which is about an hour northwest of Houston.
Yes,
And
sir.
so watching him just as a kid grow up and just to evolve into the man that he is today and to impart what he's imparting to me,
on my journey is just an
Yeah.
absolute blessing. So shout out to Pastor James Mable Sr.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yes, and for me, my father, my grandfather, my first mentor, my father Nathan Thompson, my
Yeah.
grandfather James Trawick, and my first mentor, which I didn't even know what a mentor was, someone who just took me under his wing, Keith Ellerby, from North Philly as well.
Yeah.
And they're all no longer here, but they live with me. The lessons they taught me, they continue to live with me.
Wow. 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 Thank you all for sharing that. Definitely appreciate that. So listen, I want to start the conversation off by reading something to you all. So I reached out to I didn't post this on social media. I wanted to be very intentional with this question because I knew it was sensitive, and I didn't want anyone to not feel comfortable answering. So I reached out to men and I asked them this question. I said, "What's the hardest thing about being a man? What's the hardest thing about being a man?" And so I have some responses here that I want to read to you all, and I just want to let's see where the conversation goes from there. So, and I'm not giving out any names or anything else like that because I did promise confidentiality. So, I had one person who said, for him, what's the hardest thing about being a man? The process of accepting your past decisions and lessons while representing yourself to the world today, being unfinished because your vision for the future will need all of it to succeed and thrive. The man deals with this before he kisses his loved ones and leaves the house. I have another gentleman who said, just load management. I have another gentleman who said, the hardest thing for me is the loneliness. I believe women actually, I don't believe women actually understand how lonely it is to be a man, that no matter what, people expect you to be strong, brave, and providing. But they don't understand just how lonely and isolating that can make a person feel. Wow. I have another gentleman say the lack of safety, both emotionally and physically. It's difficult to feel safe in society with all that has been happening with, especially with African American men. Also, I find it difficult to find people who I feel safe with to be myself. I have someone says, hands down, the hardest thing about being a man is ego. I think a lot of men don't even know that because of how blind they are to their ego pride, it hinders them in life overall, including the healing process. I have another gentleman who says, the hardest thing for me, I would have to say, is dealing with the pressure of communicating what's really causing depression and stress that stems from failure and setbacks. I have one more that I want to share with you all. And it says, I think the hardest thing about being a man is that the world can be an unforgiving place, particularly as a black man. To the rest of the world, a lot of the times it feels like we're treated as the enemy. So it feels like you constantly have be on guard. Excuse me. I was lucky to have a close, tight knit family and solid friends, so I always felt the love and support from them. But I was taught very early not to expect the same support or care from the rest of the world. I think another thing that is tough about being a man are the expectations and pressures placed on you. We're expected to be providers, protectors, fighters, and take on all things no matter what. It's almost taboo or a sign of weakness to have any emotions around that stuff. So most of us don't deal with the emotional aspect of things, which is not good for our mental health. Wow. Um so after sharing what I just shared from men in our community, what's some things that surfaced for you all, and is there anything that these men shared that you all can identify with?
Yes,
Yeah.
I would say the strength. You know, the worldly perception of a man is that he has to be strong at all times, and he has to carry his way a certain way, and showing any sign of vulnerability or weakness or lack of macho strength,
Yeah.
so to speak, in certain moments, you get talked about, you get shunned. People look down on you like you're not a real man, you're not strong enough to be a man, and just having to carry the weight of that worldly view.
Yeah.
Because as men, we are supposed to be strong, we are supposed to provide, especially that's how God ordered it. But Jesus wept. You know,
Wow.
it's
Yeah.
okay to cry. It's okay
Yeah.
to cry. And when you do such things as that, people and the world look at you as not as much as a man as you should be.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you for that.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll say to that as well. It has a couple of things just stood out. I think as all these answers, as you were talking about, brother, the underlying denominator for me was the sense of just this expectation
Yeah.
of what a man is supposed to be. I think about um, number one, the world that we currently live in, the
Yes, sir.
current state of the world, the external expectation for us, unfortunately, from a broader perspective, as a black man
Yeah.
in this world, we already come here with strikes against us. Number one,
Yeah.
from an external lens.
Yes, sir.
So now having to deal with the external pressure coupled with the internal struggles can cause great trauma for men. And so there were several things that, like I said, that were mentioned in those answers um, that I've dealt with. And still, if not careful, these things
Yes,
can
sir.
creep up on you in a
Yes, sir.
heartbeat,
Come
the
on. That's
most
real.
strongest. I tell people all the time, no matter how anointed you are, how many scriptures you know, how well you pray,
Hmm.
um, these emotions and these things can have an impact on you if you're not on guard, and watching your ear and your eye gates is really
Yeah.
really important for
Yeah.
what you internalize. So yeah.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that.
Yeah. I mean, I would, of course, agree with what both of you just said. Um, and just, for me, take it a step further, right? Because I feel like there was something in every single thing that you read that resonated with either how I have felt recently or how I have felt in the past. There
Yes,
was
sir.
nothing that was said that I
Same
don't
here.
remember feeling at
Same
some
here.
point in time, right? And I think the hardest thing is probably accepting that all of those feelings can be true at any given point in time, and
Yeah.
not walking around carrying the anger from that,
Okay.
from the fact that that's how we do end up having to feel at some point in time.
Yeah.
And, when we look at the Bible, when we look at that, we see that there is, there are expectations just from a biblical perspective,
Yes,
as
sir.
far as we, as not just men, but as humans, what we are supposed to do as followers of Christ, what
Yes,
we are
sir.
supposed to do as God's children. So there's always a duty for us and expectations with regards to how we handle our family and how
Yeah.
we deal with the community and things like that. But when you add that with the cultural pressures
Yeah.
and this weird dichotomy of this is what you're supposed to do, but also don't do it too well because then you're toxic, or then you're all these.
Wow.
We don't really always know where we're supposed to fit. Like, how
Yeah.
do you be a man,
Yeah.
like, and live up to everybody's expectations, because none of them are consistent.
Correct.
And I think that that is the hardest thing for us sometimes, is just to identify that we have to figure out where our boundaries lie. Like, what are our expectations? What's God's expectation for us? And are we going to shoot for that, or are we going to worry about what culture worries about?
Yeah.
And how are we going to weigh all that and balance that? I
Yeah.
think that's really probably the most difficult thing,
Yeah.
because there's competing interests.
Yeah. Thank you for that. Something that stuck out for me is the fact that a lot of a lot was what was being said was there was like an idea of isolation, and the isolation being kind of like what you were saying, what you all mentioned was the expectations that's being placed on men, and because you may not um, live up to that, there's no space for you to say help.
Mm-hmm.
There really isn't any space. And especially as black men, we're not given permission, or just men in general, we're not given permission to say help. I need help. Um, and I think that the isolation is such an important thing, and and that word just resonated with me. But then the other thing that kind of stuck out with me too, for me too, is the fact that there's this misunderstanding about what a man is. And I think that other men don't understand what it means being a man, because men are, Dr. James just said it, Dr. George James just said it. He said that his belief is that men are sensitive, that I share that same belief. And I feel that men have the capacity for emotional complexity, but we're not given permission to experience that, feel that, voice that, because we're kind of forced into these silos, and we're forced into these expectations, and forced into these standards. So let me ask you all a question. If we were, and I may be jumping the gun here, and I know we have to revisit this conversation, so hopefully you all are willing to come back to have this conversation. All right. If we were to, matter of fact, let me backtrack that. What's needed to help address some of the things that we just heard the men in our community say? What are some of the things that need to happen? And not only what they share, but even with some of the things that you all experience and that we experience as men and as Black men, what are some of the things that need to be put in place to help address or to help stave off those feelings of that pressure, the isolation, the misunderstandings, and feeling that you have to live up to those expectations and those standards?
I think leadership is one thing, and it sounds like something, but it's not necessarily a super practical answer, because there's a lot of questions you have to answer to get to that point. But I don't think that we have a lot of voices in our community that are pro-truth when it comes to what we need to know as men. We have a lot of voices. Some of our most influential voices are culture driven. So we have a lot of voices that are designed, and not just designed, but their agenda or their intention is to appease the popular cultural response to whatever's said. So it's people that are trying to please the people.
Yeah.
And I don't think that we as men get to that healthy place by pleasing culture, because culture as of right now isn't very pro us.
Yeah.
It's not very pro us for different reasons, and for different reasons. I'll leave it at that.
Yeah.
But we need people that are not afraid to have conversations like this.
Yeah.
And to have them in an open forum.
Yeah.
And to really honestly stand in the front and take the fire.
Yeah.
Because culture is going to attack those voices.
Wow.
That's just the way that it is.
Wow.
And we see it on social media. So
thank you. Thank you for that.
Yes, and to further Derek's point, that's where my mind was going. You know, being able to have these conversations in more open forums where, you know, other men who may not be willing to share these things can hear and be a part of it. Women who don't usually hear these things, especially from, you know, their sons or their significant others. You know, being able to hear a vulnerable side of men, where men are just being men, and we talk the same way women talk. It's not the same kind of conversation, but you know, we go through stuff. You know, like, man, listen, let me tell you about this, and it's real on both ends. And to couple that with therapy, and not just one-on-one therapy where a man is able to share all of that, but family therapy, and those loved ones being able to be a part of those conversations as well.
Wow. That's excellent. Thank you. Thank you. What about you, Dr. Mable?
Yeah, absolutely. To continue in that same vein, for the longest, as Brother Dave was talking about, we as a culture have been taught to conceal.
Yes, sir.
And to suppress and to not share. And unfortunately, within our culture, we are afraid that we're going to be looked at a certain way if we begin to open up, because of our cultural status, because of our position, because of our whatever we do externally. But at the same time, we're suffering inwardly.
Yes, sir.
And so I think just being able to be more intentional, as Derek was saying, about just having leaders and those who are not afraid to, per se, just let their guard down and be vulnerable. Because when people know, especially in this day and time,
yes, sir,
authenticity is the greatest grabber of attention. If somebody is authentic in what they do, people can relate to that. My dad always used to say as a kid, as a pastor, you know, people in the pew aren't dumb. And so people know when you are not walking in an authentic way, when it's versus just for a presentation, just from a standpoint
Yeah.
of those kind of avenues. So I think having people, like you said, is just not being afraid to share and open up. And what's going to happen is, as we've just listened to some of these answers from these men, these answers are they're intersections. They're
Yes, they
they're they're
are.
intertwined.
Yes, they
And
are.
what that'll do is that'll provide a release of so many feelings. It's like, wait a minute, you going through that too? Like you've
Yeah.
experienced that?
Yes.
And then
Yes.
what that does is that ultimately strengthens the community, because while we are in these silos
Yeah.
thinking that, oh, it's just me, now you understand that there's a whole community going through some of the same things or have
Wow.
experienced some of the same things. So
Wow. That is
Yeah,
so
yeah,
important.
and I would say to end what you guys are both sharing and everything everyone else shared, there's salvation and transparency. You know,
Yeah.
when brothers are authentic and can share their true stories and their true selves and their true experiences, it has the power to save someone's life, you know,
Yeah.
because brothers are dealing with all of this weight, and depression comes to mind, you know, out in the streets acting reckless because they just don't know what to do. And being able to have these conversations in an authentic manner, you know,
Yes,
can
sir.
save their lives because hearing someone else's transparency is powerful.
Wow. Thank you, gentlemen, for that. I definitely appreciate that. Listen, we have to wrap up this conversation right now, but I need y'all to promise me y'all gonna come back so we can. This right here is like an entire episode with just this group right here in this room, and we gotta get Dr. James back too. Dr. George James, gotta get him back too. But listen, gentlemen, we're gonna wrap up. Can you please tell folks where they can find you? I'm gonna start with Derek. We're gonna go to Dr. James Mable, and then we're gonna hop over to Daniel.
Okay. Yeah. Hey everybody. Um, yeah, so where to find me? You can always go to my website, viewpoints.media. There is no .com. The .media is the .com. So just viewpoints.media. Put it in your browser. It will pop right up. You can also follow me on Instagram. My personal page, killebrew.jr. That's KILLEBREW.jr, or viewpoints_media. Both of those are my pages. So those are the best ways to reach out to me, look and keep up and see what I'm doing.
Sweet, sweet. Thank you, sir.
Of course.
absolutely. You want to follow myself, you can follow me on Instagram at Mable Jr. That's JMABLEJR. On Facebook, James Mable Jr. My website, jamesmablejr.com. I'm also out there on YouTube. You subscribe to my YouTube channel. There are videos of me ministering, all over the country. And so those are the avenues that you can find me. I don't, have too big of a, grand bourgeois squad. So if you send a message, it'll be me replying.
Same here, sir. Same here.
Yes.
Cool. Thank
Yes,
you.
and you can find me at Daniel Trawick. That's Trawick. On all social media platforms, as well as my website, danieltrawick.com, where you can purchase my books and book me to speak, all in one place.
Nice. Daniel, thank you so much. Gentlemen, thank you so much. Derek, thank you, sir. Daniel, Dr. James, thank you so much for being here. And thank you also, Dr. George James. He's not on the line with us right now, but thank you, sir. Hopefully you get this message. Nobody touch that dial. We will be right back with the Tommy Talk Show for our close. Thank you. Everybody, so that is our show. Thank you so much for joining us. This is your boy TW Suggs on the Tommy Talk Show. We had an amazing conversation about celebrating and supporting our men with conversations that deal with beneath his armor. So everybody, if you want to tune in and find more of our shows, you can check me out on Instagram at TW Suggs. You can check me out at Facebook, TW Suggs. You can also go to the website, www.twsuggs. And we are in affiliation with the Culture Talk Show. And our parent station is P3 Christian Radio. Our engineer and producer for the day is the wonderful and the awesome Keith Pelzer. And we are in the Combos Lounge. Thank you.